In the heart of a suburban neighborhood in Greenwood, there stood an old Victorian house, known among the local teens as a spot for gatherings and shared memories. This house, with its sprawling backyard and air of mystery, belonged to Mike, a college sophomore, known for his warm hospitality and love for bringing friends together. On this particular weekend, the house was buzzing with excitement as Mike had planned a reunion for his close-knit group of friends, a mix of college mates and high school canyons. The group arrived, each bringing their own stories and laughter, filling the house with a familiar and comforting energy. Among them was Mike's younger brother, Tommy, a 12-year-old boy brimming with curiosity and a penchant for adventure. Unlike the older teens, who were busy catching up in the living room, Tommy was drawn to the expansive backyard, a place he had explored countless times, yet it never ceased to intrigue him with its secrets and hidden corners. This day was no different for Tommy. With the sun high in the sky, he ventured to a neglected part of the yard, a place overgrown with wild bushes and shaded by tall, old trees. It was here, in this forgotten corner, that Tommy's keen eyes spotted something unusual, half buried in the ground. It was an old knife, its blade corroded with rust and handle covered in dirt. Intrigued by this discovery, Tommy's mind raced with possibilities. Was it a relic from a bygone era, or simply a lost tool from the house's past? Filled with excitement, Tommy ran back to the house to fetch an old toothbrush and returned to clean his find. As he scrubbed the layers of rust and dirt, he uncovered an eerie inscription on the blade. "I will quay." The words, etched deeply into the metal, sent a chill down his spine. Yet Tommy, with the innocence of youth, was more intrigued than frightened. He imagined tales of pirates or adventurers from long ago, and he couldn't wait to share this find with his brother and friends. Unaware of the significance of his discovery, Tommy proudly carried the knife back to the house. The older teens, absorbed in their conversations and games, humored Tommy with a glance at the knife, but quickly dismissed it as just another of his backyard treasures. As the evening approached and the house filled with the warm glow of sunset, a strange, almost imperceptible change began to occur. The air grew heavier. The shadows in the corners seemed to deepen, and a sense of unease slowly crept over the house. Tommy, clutching his newfound treasure, remained oblivious to the subtle shift in the atmosphere. The house, which had always been a sanctuary of laughter and light, was slowly succumbing to an ancient curse, unwittingly unleashed by the inscription on the knife. As the light faded and the night began to envelop the house, the friends were unaware that they were about to be plunged into a night of unimaginable terror, a game of survival against a malevolent Tommy's innocent discovery. As nightfall descended on Greenwood, the old Victorian house, once a beacon of light and laughter, began to morph into something far more sinister. The subtle changes that started with the sunset grew more pronounced. Lights flickered inexplicably, and the once comforting shadows of the house to move with a life of their own. The friends, initially dismissive of these odd occurrences, began to sense that something was amiss. Whispers of unease circulated among them, though no one dared to voice their growing fears aloud. In the midst of this growing tension, Tommy, still clutching the old knife, was the only one who remained blissfully unaware of the eerie transformation taking place. His mind was filled with fantasies of the knife's origin, imagining it as a treasure from distant lands or a forgotten artifact from a time long past. He roamed the house, his youthful imagination running wild, oblivious to the unease settling over his brother and their friends. As the evening wore on, the group tried to engage in their usual activities, playing board games, sharing stories, and enjoying snacks in an attempt to dispel the creeping dread. But the house seemed to resist their efforts. The laughter that once echoed through the halls now fell flat, swallowed by an inexplicable gloom. The first truly alarming incident occurred when one of the friends, Sarah, went to the kitchen for a drink. The journey back to the living room, a path she had walked countless times, turned into a disorienting maze. The familiar layout of the house seemed to twist and turn in impossible ways, and Sarah found herself lost in a labyrinth of hallways that seemed to have sprung up out of nowhere. Her calls for help, muffled and distorted, finally reached the others, who rushed to find her. After what felt like hours, they found Sarah in a distant part of the house, a place none of them remembered ever seeing. She was visibly shaken, her eyes wide with fear, unable to explain how she had ended up in that forgotten wing. The incident shattered the last remnants of normalcy, and the group huddled together, trying to make sense of the inexplicable occurrences. The realization that they were no longer alone in the house slowly dawned on them. A sinister presence, ancient and malevolent, had awoken with the reading of the inscription on the knife. This entity, a manifestation of darkness and malice, had laid dormant for centuries, waiting for an unwitting soul to break its slumber. Now, freed from its bonds, it sought to claim the house and its occupants for its twisted games. As the night deepened, the house continued to transform. Corridors elongated, rooms shifted, and the once familiar spaces became a terrain of nightmares. The entity, reveling in its newfound freedom, began to toy with the group, manipulating the environment and instilling a pervasive sense of terror. It was clear that the house, under the control of this malevolent force, was no longer a safe haven, but a trap designed to test their sanity and survival. The group, bound by their friendship and the need to protect Tommy, realized they had to confront the entity. But how does one fight a being that can bend reality to its will? A creature that thrives on fear and chaos? The answer lay hidden in the history of the knife and the ancient words inscribed upon it. To end this nightmare, they needed to unravel the mystery of the cursed knife and confront the devilish force it had unleashed. With the first challenge behind them, the group's focus turned to unraveling the mystery of the cursed knife. They gathered in the kitchen, the morning light casting a stark contrast to the darkness that had enveloped the house just hours before. The knife lay on the table, its inscription gleaming ominously under the sunlight. They all knew that understanding its origins and the meaning behind the words was crucial to their survival. Mike, with his knowledge of local history, recalled tales of an old witch trial that had taken place centuries ago in Greenwood. Legend had it that a condemned witch had cursed a knife with her dying breath, vowing that those who disturbed her rest would be forced to play a deadly game. This piece of lore seemed to align eerily with their current predicament. They pondered if the knife Tommy had found was the same one from the legend, and if so, how to break a centuries-old curse. Their deliberations were cut short by the entity's voice, announcing the second challenge. This time, it was a macabre version of Tag. The person who wasn't would be possessed by the entity and given a limited time to catch another. If they succeeded, the caught person would become, but if they failed, the consequences would be fatal. Panic set in as they realized the implications of this game. It wasn't just about avoiding being caught. It was also about the moral dilemma of having to tag one of their own to survive. The entity's twisted game was designed not only to terrorize them physically, but to break their bonds of friendship and trust. The house, under the entity's control, became a dangerous playground. Furniture moved on its own, creating obstacles and barriers, while doors and windows locked themselves, trapping them inside. The friends, now prey in this deadly game, ran for their lives, each moment filled with dread of being touched and turned into the next eats. In the midst of the chaos, Mike and Tommy stayed close, their bond as brothers proving to be a source of strength and determination. They helped each other navigate the treacherous house, always one step ahead of the entity's grasp. Their efforts, however, were not just about survival. They were also frantically searching for clues about the knife and the curse. As the game wore on, the entity grew more aggressive in its pursuit, and the challenges of avoiding capture became increasingly difficult. The group's resolve was tested to its limits, but their determination to protect each other and break the curse kept them going. Finally, as the sun began to set, signaling the end of the second challenge, the friends found themselves exhausted but intact. They had managed to avoid being caught, but the toll on their mental and physical well-being was evident. Despite the fear and fatigue, they knew they couldn't rest. The night would bring another challenge, and they were running out of time to break the curse. Their investigation into the knife's history had to be quick, thorough. They scoured the house for any books or documents that might shed light on the witch trials and the legend of the cursed knife. Each clue they uncovered brought them closer to understanding the curse, but also deeper into the dark history of Greenwood and the horrors that had been unleashed. As the third night approached, The group steeled themselves for what was to come. They knew the entity would not hold back, and the next challenge could be their last. Their only hope lay in solving the mystery of the knife and finding a way to end the game once and for all. As dusk fell on the third day, the group's research into the cursed knife and the witch trials began to bear fruit. They discovered an old journal hidden in the attic, belonging to one of the town's founders. The journal detailed the trial of a woman accused of witchcraft, her defiance in the face of injustice, and her final curse as she was condemned. The description of the cursed knife matched the one Tommy had found, confirming their worst fears. They were indeed dealing with a centuries-old curse. The journal also hinted at a possible way to break the curse, a ritual that required them to confront the entity and renounce its game, thus reversing the witch's final spell. But it was a dangerous gambit. Failure would mean not only their demise, but potentially unleashing the entity upon the world. Armed with this knowledge, the group prepared for the night's final challenge, knowing it was their last chance to end the nightmare. The entity, sensing their plan, announced the most harrowing game yet. A twisted version of the floor is lava, where the ground would literally become a deadly trap, and the only safe spaces were the ever-shrinking pieces of furniture. As the game began, the house transformed once more. The floors glowed with an eerie, fiery light, and touching them meant certain death. The friends leaped from chair to couch, desperately clinging to safety, all the while trying to perform the ritual to break the curse. In the midst of this chaos, Tommy, clutching the cursed knife, became the focal point of the ritual. His innocence, which had initially awakened the curse, now became their beacon of hope. Mike, with the support of their friends, led the incantation, each word echoing through the house with the power of conviction and a desperate plea for release. The entity, enraged by their defiance, intensified its efforts to stop them. The house shook, the flames rose higher, and the air was filled with the entity's howls of anger. But the group's determination was unshakable. They recited the ritual, their voices united in a chorus of resistance against the darkness. As the ritual reached its climax, a blinding light erupted from the knife, enveloping the entire house. The ground ceased its deadly glow, the shifting rooms settled, and the oppressive presence that had haunted them began to fade. The entity, bound by the words of the ritual, was forced back into the depths from which it had emerged, its hold on the house and the group broken. Exhausted but victorious, the friends embraced, their bonds strengthened by the ordeal they had endured together. The house, once a place of terror, now returned to its former state, a sanctuary of warmth and safety. They had not only survived the entity's games, but had also broken a curse that had lingered for centuries. As dawn broke, the group stepped outside, greeted by the light of a new day. They knew their experience would stay with them forever, a reminder of the strength they found in each other and the power of unity in the face of darkness. The cursed knife, now just a harmless relic, was buried deep in the backyard, never to be disturbed again. With the nightmare behind them, they looked forward to a future filled with hope, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together